So good morning and welcome to Unity of Chautauqua. And a friend of mine sent this wonderful gift to me, a video. And since this is the beginning of Advent and a lot of us are thinking, perhaps you remember ways in which Advent not only is a holy experience, but one in which we set ourselves up for joy and things. And this video to me expressed that, like how we love surprising people and creating joy. So give me a second, and I am going to share this gift from one of my friends, and I'm going to pass it along to you.
Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Sing, choirs of angels, sing in exaltation, sing all that's here in heaven, God's holy word. Give to our Father glory in the highest. Oh, come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him,
So, that was so interesting video. And let me go back here for a moment. I just kind of passed this by, but as I was listening to that and listening to the words, one of the thoughts I had is that as a child, I had a different meaning of that song, Come Let Us Adore Him, that I have now as an adult. And my childhood understanding was adoring Jesus. And my adult is adoring the consciousness with which he came and shared with the world. So our Advent reflection, and just invite you into this, is to understand the blessing that this season, which engages the whole world in a conspiracy of love. And so let's just take a moment with that what we're being called is to celebrate not how Jesus came into the world, but rather with what came with Jesus that begs to come in alive in you and in me. And so this is the beginning of Advent, and it's just such a joy to celebrate it with you. And so just a little about unity. One of the things I love about unity is when I found unity in the late 70s, that it was a path that helped me open my mind to so many possibilities. It taught me how to really touch into my heart and connect with others. And then ultimately, that opening of my mind and heart helped me transform my life. And so we say unity is a positive, practical, progressive approach to Christianity, and it's based on the teachings of Jesus and the power of prayer. Unity honors the universal truths in all religions and respects each individual's right to choose a spiritual path. And so if you'd like to know more about unity, then I invite you to go to our website. You can also sign up for our newsletter. That's unitychq.org, and it's a combination of Unity Worldwide's website, unity.org, and Chautauqua Institution, which we're part of, Unity of Chautauqua, where we spend our whole summers on site at Chautauqua, and then once a month until we return for the summer in Chautauqua. And you can find out about that at chq.org. And we just love you to join us this coming summer in person. So, and this is just another part of our announcements. What's coming up in a month from now? We're doing the White Stone celebration, and that's on Sunday, January 2nd at 9:30, again in the morning. And we're going to have a special guest musician, Wiley Beveridge. You'll just love him. He's just incredible. In fact, we've used his music before, several times before on our Sunday services. And the White Stone is based on a verse in Revelations that says, "To everyone who conquers, I will give a white stone, and on that white stone is written a new name that no one knows except the one who receives it." And so this is a process where back in the days of Jesus, when somebody went through a difficult time and perhaps they were in bondage and they were released from that bondage, they would be given a white stone, and upon it, they would name a new essence of their nature that was a new beginning. And so join us in a month from now. I hope you, and if you're seeing this online, go back to some of our previous Sundays, again, once a month on our YouTube, and you can get that through our website. So we are going to begin our Sunday lesson, and I'm going to begin it with another friend shared this music with me. So enjoy it.
joy, oh holy joy. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Oh, let your light blaze through. Let your image reflect the truth that you are God's own child. Shout about the light within, holy, pure, and undefiled. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy, springs from my soul to you. Catch on fire with the zeal of God, oh let your light blaze through. Dance and sing, yes, laugh and shout, creation gives you the cue. You say that your God is love, it's time to live it like it's true. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy, springs from my soul to you. Catch on fire with the zeal of God, oh let your light blaze through. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Oh, let your light blaze through. Let your image reflect the truth that you are God's own child. Shout about the light within, holy, pure, and undefiled. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Oh, let your light blaze through. Catch the Spirit. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Spirit is joy, oh holy joy. Oh, let your light blaze through. Let your light blaze through. Children, let your light blaze through.
So this morning we have been using the 5 spiritual principles that unity is based on, and these are universal principles. And today we're going to talk about what if God was all of us? And so it's a provocative topic, and it was such an insight when I first came to Unity, that when that idea was shared with me, that I had a divine spark within me. And let me just say that the second Unity principle, which some people really argue with, and it's this: human beings have a spark of divinity within them, the Christ Spirit. Our very essence is of God. And therefore, we are also inherently good. So when I first came, I came from a religion that said I was inherently bad and guilty. And so this took a big shift, and let's see if we can dig down this morning into that shift. And perhaps you've made that shift in your life too. So there is this Jewish proverb that I just love, but it requires a deep breath to take it into us. And it goes like this: before every person, there marches an angel proclaiming, "Behold the image of God." Okay, let me say that again. Before you and before me, there is an angel. Can you imagine that? That is processing, marching before us, proclaiming, there goes the image of God. Now think if we used our imagination on that, and every time that we were maybe even looking in the mirror and saying that angel came before us, we're looking in our mirror and of course criticizing our hair, or doing whatever we're doing. And we said, and the angels go, there's, look into your eyes. There goes the image of God. And then when we meet each other on the street and we imagine that our angel is meeting your angel, what can you imagine the shift that would take place? And especially now, it feels so important for us because in some ways we've lost our humanity. We've taken polarized ideas of each other. But wonder if we saw through the Christ eyes and we saw that divine spark and we just acknowledge that. It's like, some people go namaste, which is I behold the Christ. I see that pattern, that holiness in you. So the gift this Christmas that we can give each other is to know that angel is everywhere and not only just walking, but marching and affirming who we are. So Advent, for me, is a time of reflecting on how I'm living that Christ within me, that creating that manger in my heart that goes deeper into that divine pattern of love. And one of the ideas I came upon, I just thought this was so interesting, was the idea of that we each have a spiritual taproot. And what I mean by taproot is if you think of a plant, and if you've ever been a gardener, and I bet all of you have, and you've dug up a weed, have you ever noticed that one root is much longer and stronger? And there are these tiny little roots that come off of that root. Well, the big root is a taproot. And it reflects that what we do in our life, just like for the plant, that taproot is the thing that strengthens it and keeps it strong when there's wind and rain and things. It holds it and secures it and nurtures it. And then all the little roots come off of it. And so I wonder if our life is like that as we go into that nature of the divine and hold that, what the angel told us, that we are that image of God in expression. Wonder if we keep deepening that taproot. Think about how that's in your life. It just, the root gets stronger and stronger. So when the winds come and the rains come and it holds us secure. And for all of us, there are going to be times when there are things that are battering us. It's part of life. And it usually, it can make us go deeper. And then all those little roots to me are all the parts of our lives that taproot supports. So Rumi says something about that. Rumi encourages us to return to the root of the self. Keep going back to that. Whatever's showing up on the outside, we go back to the root, And the Apostle Paul said the same thing. He said in Ephesians, the letter to the church, he says these words. He encourages the early Christians to be strengthened in their inner self through their Christ spirit, that they may be, and this is quote, rooted and grounded in love. Strengthen our taproot in love. So again, let me say our second principle that we're talking about. And although this is a unity principle, it's also, you can see in many, many different spiritual practices, this same idea of human beings with a spark of divinity within them, the Christ, and that our very essence is of God. And therefore, we are inherently, that by our very nature, we're good. Even when we forget, it's still there in potential. So let's think about Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, said this about us, and I just love it. He said, enfolded in humankind is the Christ idea. Divinity, the divinity of human beings. And his favorite Bible verse was from Colossians, the Christ in you, the hope of glory. And Myrtle added to that idea, that divine spark. She said, because there's a divine spark, we inherit all that God has, all the peace, all the love, all the prosperity, all the wholeness that God has when we remember to go to our root and to solidify that root, to grow it and nurture that root. That holds us to that truth in the times when we're pulled in other directions that might encourage us to believe that we're weak and we're not connected. So what does Jesus say about this? He says a lot of things about the kingdom of God being within us. I think one interesting thing is what is quoted in the 5 Spiritual Principles by Reverend Ellen Davenport that I've been using for this. Jesus answered them, it says, and this is in John, "Is it not written in your law, quote, I have said you are gods." Now you need to know a little what happened before. The Pharisees are questioning Jesus, saying, "Who do you think you are? Do you think you're God?" And Jesus pointing out, "Aren't you? Don't you know who you are?" And later he goes on to say after this verse, "I'm connected to the Father," and kind of saying to them, "And you ought to be, and you aren't. And so you don't know this." Then also in John, he says and this is a conversation with his disciples, and he says, "Very truly, I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do. In fact, will do greater works than these." I never heard any of these in my childhood religion. And what's interesting is I was taught that believing in me, whenever Jesus said that, it was believing in Jesus as the only person who could get us to this understanding, to do these greater works of healing and love and generosity, all the things that come with us being rooted in God and in unity, and also in other spiritual practices. The idea of believing in the consciousness of Jesus, which which includes the whole world. Richard Rohr, if any of you read him, he has a book. He's a Franciscan priest, and he has a book called The Universal Christ, in which he comes up with something that Unity has said for a long time too, is that this isn't just about Jesus, it's about a divine pattern that anybody can tap into, and it includes the whole world in that. So what was Jesus trying to tell us about that? And I believe he was trying to demonstrate the latent potential in each of us. And if you came from my background, it was pretty shocking when I first heard that, and didn't really know how to touch that. And through years and years of practicing meditation and prayer, I get little insights of it more and more. And it's just such a revelation for me to understand the connection and the rooting that I can have in the power of love and the power of consciousness of the Christ. So Jesus, because he was so connected to this divine spark within him, as he said, the Father and I are one, that he was able to love, to forgive, to heal, to teach. And the invitation he is giving us when he says, "These things I do and greater things," is yes, to whatever is our calling, we too can express those things expressed by Jesus. So that begs the question, okay, if we have a divine spark, we don't feel, our world doesn't feel expressing a lot of divinity at times, does it? And it can test us on that. And one suggestion I'd have about that is that if you pay attention a lot to the news, it distorts that idea. I believe there's a lot of divine activity going on it's pretty quiet. And the news plays its part. It's to warn us about what needs healing. But it's just such a small idea, a small picture of what is really going on with humanity. And that is evolving. I think if we went back a couple hundred years, we would probably notice, we romanticize it, but I have a feeling that we would find the times we were living in quite profound in many ways and quite evolving in the consciousness of the Christ. So I want to read something from Richard Rohr, again, the Franciscan. And he says the most beautiful thing. He writes this: I am convinced that the reason people make great mistakes is because they've never heard what Jesus heard on the day of his baptism. They never heard another human voice, much less a voice from heaven, say to them, "You are a beloved son, you are a beloved daughter, and in you I am well pleased." So just take those words in. Just imagine right now that those are some words that have been said to you. Maybe not by a parent, right? We may not have gotten the parents that knew how to say that because nobody had said it to them. But we always have the opportunity to say that, to recognize it, and to recognize it first in ourselves and then each other. And he goes on to say, if we never had anyone believe in us, take delight in us, affirm us, call us beloved, we don't have anywhere to begin. If there's nothing exciting and wonderful to start with, we can spend our whole lives trying to say those words to ourselves. I'm okay, I'm wonderful, I'm great, but we don't believe it. The word has to come from someone greater than us. That's really a parent's job, to communicate to their child that they are beloved, eternally existing child of God. Our jails are filled, overflowing with people who never heard this foundational message. And so sadly is many in our world. But we can do that for each other, through our friends. And I've always found my greatest healing in my unity community. And through my friends, I've gotten that insight. In fact, when I do a christening for a baby, we have the whole congregation sing a blessing to the baby. And what's really significant is, instead of doing like a baptism saying, we're trying to cleanse you because you were born sinful, we instead say, the child was born divine. And we ask the parents to hold that consciousness. And I ask them to say the name of the child as if they were saying a prayer. And that every time they say the child's name, they repeat it with a prayer. Now think about what that is. And then I have them say the name in front of the congregation, committing and saying that they will, to our whole congregation, that they've done that. Now let's face it, that is a challenge. But what a great challenge. How many of us have yelled at even ourselves or our children and not used that name as if we were saying a prayer? But maybe it's something we should do. I've heard that dog training, my daughter corrected me on this, said, never correct your dog with their name. Keep their name only for the things that you love about them. So one thing I do for myself is I use the initials BMW. Yeah, that's it, BMW. That's the name of a car, and I can remember those initials. A BMW is a kind of car. And what I say to myself is, when I'm feeling kind of down, I use the B for I belong to this moment. I belong to this world. I belong to the family of friends. And then the M is, when I'm feeling kind of down about myself and wondering, I say, I matter. You matter. Just feel that. I belong. You belong. You and I matter. We make a difference. And many of the ways that we make a difference, we're never going to know. We will have no idea because we've planted seeds that will only give fruit later in some way that we won't be part of. But know that you matter. And finally, big one is that I'm worthy. I say, I'm worthy. I'm worthy of the grace and the blessings of God. And you say that to yourself too. I am worthy. You are worthy. So another, I don't know if any of you follow Tara Brach. She's a Buddhist, and she is one of my favorite. And know that Unity has some aspects of Buddhism that our co-founders were also into meditation. And you can see that through the early teachings, as well as many, many Unity ministers follow Buddhism as well and integrate that into our practice. And so as a teacher, she writes about basic goodness. And she says for decades in her life, her daily prayer was, may I trust my own goodness. May I see the goodness of others. And she had to repeat that over and over because she didn't trust it. And she just doubted herself, and she had lots of physical things to overcome in her life, which she didn't feel. She felt very weak and anxious, she said, and depressed and separate. And so she kept repeating this. And she said the grace in her life was that she used this trance, she calls, of unworthiness to bring her to her spiritual path that she practices today. So we can use all those things that knock us off base to actually create the deeper root. I know that's been my experience, is that in the darkest time in my life, I walked into a Unity church and just shifted so much. And I was given the gift of people in that church seeing beyond what I believed about myself and acknowledging it. And now I have so many friends that have continued on my path with me, who have affirmed me and I've affirmed them as we've done this deep rooting together. So there's a theologian, Paul Knitter, who is both practices Christianity and Buddhism. And he said this unique thing that really got me. He writes that the underlying reason why people keep causing themselves and others so much suffering is because we are ignorant about who and what we truly are. Our problem is not an inherent sinfulness, but an inherited ignorance. Let me say that again. That line just kind of summed up so much that I thought about. Our problem is not an inherent sinfulness, but an inherited ignorance. So there's really good news, he says. If it's just ignorance, it's not born into us that we're sinners and fallen, like many of us were taught, then we are dealing with a fixable problem. Isn't that great news? The problem is not, he says, within us as part of our human nature. Rather, it's around us. And the antidote for this ignorance that causes suffering is to wake up to who we really are. And it's also for me to be that presence to wake up other people, to get out of that otherness that's so easy right now, that we have this ongoing polarization where we are making people others and we're painting them with just one color, right? And they're painting us with just one color. This is our solution, is to see them beyond the little projections that each of us are doing out into the world. That's not who we are. And sometimes we forget about that root. We stop nurturing that deep root, that taproot within us. So what are some of the things we might want to think about this whole thing, about that we might want to shift the way that we are approaching humanity, and the way we see ourselves and others? And can we see that through what we call Christ eyes, through the divine spark? So Jesus said to love one another and love our enemies. And this love he was talking about wasn't the love we have just for our friends, the easy love, or the love I have for chocolate, though that's a deep love too. This is called what the Greeks called agape, which is unconditional love, which means a love that the person has to do nothing. They can even attack us. It doesn't depend on anything. It's because it's who we are. It's not about what they project, who they are. We see beyond that with our Christ eyes. And Dr. Martin Luther King said these beautiful words about that. He called it redeeming goodwill for all. And I've sat with that word redeeming, and redeeming means to counteract the negative. So if we approach life with our angel out in front saying, behold the image of God, walking and behold the image of God to the other person, knowing no matter what's showing up, they've forgotten. And we are redeeming goodwill. We're doing what Dr. Martin Luther King said would save our world and save each other. The other thing is we have to know that when we take on this Christ understanding, that doesn't say that we leave our beliefs and passions at the door in the name of peace or neutrality in the face of wrongdoing. Or as Richard Rohr says, loving is not liking necessarily, but it does mean that we cultivate discernment rather than judgment. We move from an emotional charge of annoyance or even disgust to wisdom, calm, and accountability. It's powerful. And sometimes I jump to I've met people where my judgment kicks in. They're saying things that are absolutely opposite of what I think is good for the world. Absolutely. People around me in my neighborhood have said things that just have, and I've had to go back and do my forgiveness for her. Before I could do this, the angel that is them, that is, behold, that divine pattern in them. But I get there. It's a practice that keeps deepening and deepening. And the more that the polarization shows up, the more the opportunity for me to own this. Am I really going to own this? It's great. My friends, they're all supporting. It's what I need to nurture that deep root. But I also need those that say exactly the opposite and that I consider wrongdoing in their lives, that they are actually doing things that harm other people. And I know that me wanting that truth doesn't happen by anger or disgust. That only happens when I can do that redeeming goodwill that Dr. Martin Luther King spoke about. And so the third thing is for us to understand that there's a difference between bad decisions and, quote, bad people, which is that we could choose grace in every situation. So as to not see people as the sum of their mistakes or bad decisions or even bad beliefs. We understand that all of us are multifaceted. And that if we saw into their lives and we saw all the wonderful ways they support their family and friends, and they love the world and nurture the world. And so I would like to leave you with this poem before we start our meditation. So may you be rooted and grounded in enduring love. May you trust this essential core of goodness within you. May you choose to be nurtured through times of stillness. May this root of divinity strengthen and support you. May you discover inner peace and carry it through your travails. May you return time and time again to the taproot of your life. And so now I'm going to take us to some music. And let me just tell you a little about this song. It's one in our hymnal. And we have not, you probably haven't heard it for a long time. I haven't heard it, but I came across it and I thought, I love that song whenever we sang it in church. And so I found a video of it, and I would like to share it with you because it's just so profound, and then we'll meditate on this song.
I behold the Christ in you. Here the life of God I see. I can see a great peace too. I can see you whole and free. I behold the Christ in you. I can see this as you walk. I see this in all you do. I can see this as you talk. I behold God's love expressed. I can see you filled with power. I can see you ever blessed. See Christ in you, hour by hour. I behold the Christ in you. I can see that perfect one, led by God in all you do. I can see God's work is done. Oh, in you I see God's work is done. I behold the Christ in you.
Oh, so let's take that into meditation. And I don't know, for some reason, that always brings tears to my eyes, that song, because I can imagine a world in which we show up for each other, beholding the Christ. And healing each other. A world in which that angel that marches and pronounces to each of us, behold, the image of God. And so we just hold that we are awakening to that image of God within us. Around us. That we are opening to Christmas eyes this Advent season and beyond. The gift of consciousness that Jesus brought to this world To behold the Christ, we behold love within us and to the stranger. Jesus inviting over and over again those that were pushed away to the table to share in the grace, the love, the wholeness of God. And so I take on that grace of beholding, as Jesus did, the stranger, the friend, myself, in the eyes of love, in the practice of forgiveness, knowing that each time I forgive myself and forgive another, I just create a deeper root, a taproot of strength. And the gift of wholeness that Jesus shared, inviting us into the potential of both body and mind, into that knowing that wherever we are in our lives, we are whole in spirit. And then into the generosity that Jesus invited us into, the generosity of giving of who we are. To what is being called forth in us. And so we take these words. I behold the Christ in you. Here the life of God I see. I can see a great peace too. I can see you whole and free. Let's take that into the silence. And we affirm what is seeking to become alive in us. As we say, we behold the Christ in all. Here the light of God I see. I can see all in great peace. I can see all our world whole and free. And so it is. Amen and amen. So the invitation as we go into our offering is to allow those words, behold the image of God in the world. And our offering blessing, you just hold out your hands with me, and the gift that has been this invitation that Jesus begs to come alive in us. The Jesus message begs to come alive. We hold that in our hands as an offering to the world. and we say these words: divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I am grateful. And just take a moment now and feel that gratitude. And for those of you that have asked how, in fact, somebody just asked me, where do I give? You go to our website or in your email. You can either do that through an address, sending a check, or a PayPal. So just so grateful to everyone that supports our ministry and supports especially our summer program as we bring ministers to Chautauqua. It makes such a difference. And so this week we're not going to sing I Am Blessed, but I just let's say it. Say it in just as words, and maybe think of something about this Christmas season in which you're going to know that you are blessed. So I am blessed. I am blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. Then would you join now in our unity prayer of protection? And as we say this, just know that this prayer began in the 1940s to protect our troops. And then in the 1960s, it went up to the moon. And so this prayer by Buzz Aldrin, he took it to the moon and left it there. I always think of that it's shining upon the earth and reminds us that the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And so I thank you for being with us this morning. It's just a delight. And know that in a month, the first Sunday in January, I am so excited about the White Stone. If you have not ever experienced that, it's life-changing for me because I have my stone from last year and I think about it, and I've already got my white stone for this coming year as we do that. We're gonna have some beautiful music too. So thank you for being here. We're gonna stop the recording, but I can't wait to see you. And also you can go to our Facebook page and to learn what's coming for the rest of the month before we begin our summer program. So God bless each and one of you. May you have just a Christmas in which you see that Christ expressing everywhere.